He brought you the definitive historical account of America's war between the states, the six-part series, The Civil War. He brought you America's greatest pastime, a complete reckoning of our national obsession with baseball. And then came the entire history of jazz in America. Now, in a scope unprecedented in the annals of film documentary, comes Ken Burns' most ambitious miniseries to date. Spanning several decades, featuring high schools from Maine to Alaska, Ken Burns presents The American High School Classes in Profile. An in-depth look at one outstanding graduating class from every high school in America. Tonight's installment, episode number 436, The Class of '71, Chenango Forks Central High School.
Most of the class of '71 embarked on their school career with inauspicious beginnings, starting kindergarten in the fall of 1958 at what is now referred to as the Old Kenyon Building, named after one of the dedicated teachers who became a legend for her strict discipline. Others moved to the area over the next several years, joining the class and adding to its burgeoning numbers. One of the more infamous incidents at the Old Kenyon Building is related here from a rare internet posting by Craig Richards. Mr. Turlip, the science teacher, using Dean Lucas for a demo of the static electricity generator in the auditorium of the Kenyon Building is one of my fondest memories. The thing was supposed to make Dean's hair stand on end, but Dean was being shocked through the soles of his penny loafers, being grounded by the nails in the wood floor. He was screaming like Curly of the Three Stooges. Craig Richards.
The class of '71 actually was not picked as the best class of Chenango Forks. There were several other classes within that time span that were much, much higher on the list. The problem was none of those other classes responded to our inquiries.
I'd like to respond to that if I may. As far as I'm concerned, Professor Fudgewich, or Fudwick, whatever you call him, is full of crap. Because the class of '71 at Chenango Forks was the greatest class of all time, in my opinion. And, excuse me? Was he there? Was he there? I was there. I went to Chenango Forks. In fact, I was a graduate. Well, I got my GDE, but I was there, and I was also on the custodial staff. So I knew the class of '71 intimately, at least a couple of the girls, if you know what I mean.
The class of '71, and we did extensive research. We looked at sports, we looked at academic achievement, we looked at socialization, and we looked at postgraduate success. Chenango Forks class of '71 came out in terms of top to bottom, right there in the middle.
The class of '71 was an innovative bunch. They were the first to break the mold of the prom tradition and go dateless for their senior prom. We were the first to go somewhere besides the school gymnasium for prom night. I remember us trying to convince the school that it made more sense. No decorating, no cleanup. It was a tough sell at first, but our diligence finally paid off. That whole night is still very foggy. Gary Bennett. The truth was, Gary was still smarting from an operation he had just had, the infamous Larson transplant. And since in recovery he couldn't score anyway, why spend the money on a date, he figured. He arranged the whole dateless thing, which became a trend throughout the country.
I did extensive research on Mark Larson, and it's a rather perverted story, even from my position in academia, but I would say this, Mark Larson, let's say, how can I explain this in the documentary, was well endowed. He felt somewhat sorry for a friend of his, Gary Bennett, and so had a procedure done where some of his endowment was shared with Gary Bennett. I don't want you to understand this in the wrong way. I don't mean that they shared something between the two of them. I simply mean that some of the stuff that was in Mark's possession then became in Gary's possession. And again, going back to the Zen of the universe, it all equaled itself out in the end.
The thing of Mark Larson is a big fantasy, if you ask me. The whole thing started in the locker room because of Mark's endowment, and everyone was jealous. And Bob Bush remarked one day, "Hey, why don't you give some of that away?" And Gary Bennett was standing in the area, and, well, because he wasn't as well endowed, that's how the whole thing started. It's a big fiction.
Another innovation was the annual Memorial Day Fair in Chenango Forks. It wasn't started by this class, but they were the most successful at catching the pig in the pig greasing catch. Herb Volkert had a trained pig that he would secretly put in the bunch so he could win. Some rare footage survives of him practicing with his pig for this event.
Well, I think a prime example would be Herb Volkert, which is, even there you can tell it's not an average name, and yet he's a very average person. He is still telling the same jokes, as I understand it, as he told back in 1971, and by the way, people are still not laughing at them. The class as a whole reluctantly invited him to the reunion because he frankly had to go to a below average school.
Yeah, Professor Fedgewick is right about this. Herb Volkert kind of floundered there for a while, let's face it. He had his funny moments. But he did flounder there for a while, and I understand that he tried quite a few different careers before he landed his current job. I think we have a clip of when Herb Volkert tried out his singing career just a few years ago, and it didn't work out too well.
Finish all those tears and please don't sigh.
I was impressed what I researched about Frank Jones. It took a while to find out the whole truth. He was at best a mediocre student, and certainly hanging around with Dean Lucas, a fellow student, showed that he was destined for total failure. Instead, he went on to become a fire chief and frankly appeared, as we'll see in this clip, in an episode of Ed.
Hey, Bonnie. Sorry I'm late. Ed stuck behind a jackknife tractor trying to...
Herb Volkert and Frank Jones weren't the only CF alumni to have flirted with show business. Kept secret until now, Skip Thorndike and Rick Guzzi teamed up in 1982 and went on the road with an act that thankfully was very short-lived.
I'm looking at exceptions. The only one we found was Mark Titus, who was a minor success. That meant that he was successful under the age of 21. He appeared in, of all places, Soul Train. Why, I'm not sure, but I think we have a clip of that.
Well, you know, there's a lot of talk about the boys, but let's talk about the ladies for a minute. I mean, if you were a guy, that was a great era to be in high school because, you know, the mini skirts, oh my gosh, I couldn't get the work done. Legs all over the place. And, you know, I had an eye for the ladies. I do, I admit it. I had an eye for them, and in fact, I remember every girl's phone number from that time that I got. It was just a few of them, but I still remember them. I have a pornographic memory, in fact, and I'm proud of that.
Well, I looked at the entire class of 71 from Chenango Forks High School, and about the only thing that saved it from mediocrity, I think, was the sports teams. Not all of them. Certainly your football team was way up there.